Welcome to my channel States of History. Today's story is one that will grip your heart, test your emotions, and make you question what true strength really looks like. This is not just about the uniform or the rank, it's about resilience, dignity, and a courage that no humiliation could destroy. So sit back, listen carefully, and let yourself be drawn into a story that shocked an entire base. She was known around the base as Second Lieutenant Emily Carter. Young, determined, and fresh out of officer candidate school, Emily had walked into the military world with a heart full of fire and the quiet strength of someone who had been underestimated her whole life. Her father had been a truck driver, her mother a nurse. They weren't a military family, and no one expected Emily to wear the uniform. But she had grown up watching documentaries about wars, hearing stories of those who fought for freedom, and she wanted to be among them. At 24, she earned her commission. Her uniform was pressed, her salute sharp, and her will unshakable. But not everyone respected her. Especially not Colonel Briggs. Colonel Briggs was a man of old habits and an even older mindset. To him, the military wasn't a place for women, especially not young women in leadership positions. He hid his disdain behind orders and inspections, but every soldier on the base knew how he felt. He would nitpick Emily's reports, criticize her stance during drills, and roll his eyes whenever she spoke in briefings. Emily endured it. She knew respect was something earned slowly, not given overnight. She worked harder, stayed longer, and treated every soldier, no matter their rank, with dignity. Slowly, whispers began to spread that Lieutenant Carter was different. Fair, but tough. Kind, but strong. And perhaps that was what unsettled the colonel most. The breaking point came one afternoon in the officers' barracks. Emily had been summoned to Colonel Briggs' office. She expected another lecture about her lack of experience, but instead, she found herself in a confrontation that would scar her memory forever. The colonel sneered at her as she stood at attention. "You think you belong here, Carter? You think putting on that uniform makes you one of us? You're a joke. And I'll show you just how much a joke you are." Before Emily could react, Briggs grabbed her arm, dragged her toward the restroom, and shoved her inside. The few soldiers who witnessed it froze, torn between shock and fear of crossing a superior officer. In an act so degrading it would stain the reputation of any man, the colonel forced her head down and dunked it into the toilet. Cold water rushed over her face. The sting of humiliation was worse than the choke of water in her lungs. She pulled herself up gasping, her heart hammering with rage, with shame, with disbelief that someone entrusted with command could stoop so low. For a split second, she wanted to scream, to break down, to run. But instead, she stood up straight, water dripping from her hair, and locked eyes with him. Her voice didn't shake. "Colonel, you've just disgraced not me, but the uniform you wear. And every soldier under your command will remember this moment, not as my humiliation, but as your shame." She walked out. She didn't slam the door, didn't raise her voice. She walked out in silence, soaked, pale, but unbroken. Word spread across the base within hours. Soldiers whispered about what had happened. Some were outraged, some were afraid, but all were stunned by Emily's composure. She hadn't retaliated with anger. She hadn't reported him immediately. She had walked out with her dignity intact, refusing to be dragged into the filth of his actions. That night, alone in her room, Emily wept quietly. Not for herself, but for the idea that someone so dishonorable could hold command over men and women who deserved better. She prayed for strength, then sat down and wrote a detailed report. Not of vengeance, but of truth. She included every detail, signed it with steady hands, and sent it up the chain of command. The investigation was swift. Too many had witnessed the act. Briggs tried to deny it, then to justify it, claiming it was a lesson in toughness. But his lies fell apart against the weight of witnesses and Emily's unwavering testimony. When the day of the hearing came, Emily stood in her uniform before the panel of officers. Briggs sat across from her, red-faced and seething. She didn't gloat, didn't sneer. She simply told the truth. Every word cut deeper than any insult, because it revealed not just what had been done to her, but the kind of leader Briggs had always been. The panel ruled unanimously. Colonel Briggs was relieved of command, stripped of his rank, and dishonorably discharged. The news rippled through the base like a shockwave. Soldiers who had once feared him stood a little taller. And Emily, though still young and still learning, had earned something no training could ever teach. Respect. Weeks later, as she walked across the parade ground, a group of soldiers stopped what they were doing. One by one, they raised their hands in salute. Not out of obligation, but out of honor. Emily returned the salute, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. She had not fought with fists, nor with rage. She had fought with dignity. And in doing so, she had shown the entire base what true leadership looked like. Years later, Emily would go on to earn higher ranks, leading soldiers in difficult missions overseas. Her story became a quiet legend whispered among recruits, the day a young lieutenant stood unbroken against humiliation and turned it into a lesson of strength. Not many knew the details, but those who did never forgot. They said it wasn't the act itself that stunned the base, it was what she did after. She refused to be reduced by hatred. She refused to let humiliation define her. Instead, she held her head high and proved that respect cannot be taken away, only surrendered. And Emily Carter never surrendered. So when you hear this story, remember this: strength is not just about muscles, weapons, or shouting commands. Sometimes, true strength is standing tall when someone tries to drag you down. Sometimes, it's walking with dignity when others want to see you broken. And sometimes, it's the courage to speak truth when silence would be easier. Emily's story is not just hers, it belongs to every soldier, every leader, and every person who has ever been underestimated. She proved that rank can be given, power can be abused, but honor, that is something you carry in your soul. And that is why her story will always be remembered. Thank you for watching this episode on States of History. If this story touched you, if it made you think, or if it reminded you of the kind of strength we should all strive for, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these powerful stories alive. And remember, history is not just written in battles, it's written in moments of courage like this.